Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin as they search for the answers as they open up the Stargate to the cosmos.
Hello, hi everybody. Excuse me, and welcome to what is this called? Stargate to the Cosmos on Revolution Radio, and I'm your host Janet Lessin with my co-host Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Deborah DeFranco, and like I said, you're listening to Revolution Radio Studio B. And today we bring you an Anunnaki Sitchin panel with Jennifer Stein and Glenn Bogue, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, and Janet Lessin. And I'm going to let Jennifer and Dr. Lessin begin while I get Glenn Bogue on the show with us. So say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Good to have you back again.
Yes, it's so nice to hear your voice, Janet, and to know Sasha's on the other end of the line. It's a Sitchin reunion on the air. I love it.
Yeah, I sure am now. It seems like this is so apropos since we are facing similar conditions that Noah faced as the ice cap on top of Antarctica started getting slippery and glaciers the size of Rhode Island started coming, and the Anunnaki knew the Earth was going to be flooded, and right now, Thwaites Glacier and others, plus there's a lot of volcanic activity and so forth. And it seems to all be perhaps associated with the recent nearing the perigee of the planet Nibiru. And it may also have something to do with the fact that Nemesis, the red dwarf around which Nibiru rotates, as well as all the planets of the inner solar system, are getting warmer. But I guess we have the people that are assembling are the right ones to talk about all this. We're all students of Zecharia Sitchin.
So, Jen, there's a new movie coming up, and we weren't able to get our colleague on today. And I'm sorry, I'm juggling things right now. I talked to him earlier. What is his name? He's in the name of the movie.
Eric. Yes,
Eric
Wayne Key. Yes, Eric Wayne Key is a very interesting man. I believe he lives somewhere in Kentucky. I even want to say Nashville. And he took a great interest in wanting to do a documentary about Zecharia, really about the man and sort of like his life and how he became the type of man and took the type of interest in the type of research that he did. So he went in and started investigating Zechariah's background. Of course, Zach was born in Russia and moved to Israel and grew up in Palestine as a young boy. First attended a yeshiva. That's a sort of like a Jewish education-focused school where they teach Bible study right along with, mathematics and language and, all the other elementary, schools subjects you would get in a normal parochial school. But because there was also Bible and Bible history taught, it stimulated Zechariah's interest. As you both well know, he took an interest in the translations of the Bible. So, and he, of course, understood what Nephilim meant and what giant meant, and he questioned some of the interpretations in the Bible, and that set him on a quest because his teacher, rather than recognizing he had a real acumen for language and for translations, the teacher reprimanded him and told him not to question the Bible. And he got so angry about that. That anger led him the rest of his life on a quest to kind of understand Bible history and other cultures with Bible history. And that led him eventually to look into Assyrian and Sumerian history and Hittite history and the Chaldeans and he began to read and learn and study Sumerian language and cuneiform. He was already well versed in Akkadian and Hebrew text and Aramaic because that's in the Bible. And that led him to a great discovery that in the Sumerian history, there is Bible history written in the cuneiform text that is almost a mirror image or what I call a transparency layover of the same Bible stories that are in the Hebrew Bible, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Torah. And when he discovered that, he realized that there was a history of the earth and a history of galactic cataclysm that had occurred that was recorded in the Bible history. Just as Sasha said when he was opening the show about Nibiru nearing the planet Earth and the effects that that has on our planet, the potentially catastrophic events that it had possibly happened in the past. And of course, Zechariah, also being born and raised in Russia, really understood and appreciated the work of Immanuel Velikovsky, who wrote Worlds in Collision, as well as a couple of other great books. And he was a Russian physicist and astrophysicist who studied past galactic cataclysms and believed that the solar system as it is today is not always how it had been, and he believed that there was actually recorded history in man's history of not only the calendar getting longer from 265 days up to 365 days, but that there was once a planet where the asteroid belt is that was destroyed. Possibly that's Earth, and it was pushed to the position it was. And Velikovsky himself was also inspired and read and studied the Akkadian and Sumerian histories that were recorded of galactic cataclysm. And he also believed that the Bible captured these stories, and that's why there's a Jewish tradition of not wanting to change one letter or, in the Hebrew Bible, because it's the oldest, longest standing history as we know it today, because nobody reads cuneiform anymore, but people still read Hebrew. So all these great thinkers have stood upon the shoulders of people in the former past that they read and studied. So it's really like a lineage that's being passed on from ancient times to today. And many people who watch programs like Ancient Aliens now are getting that education because they're sourcing Zechariah more and more and more. So it's really a great time to reflect back with a panel and look at Zechariah's contributions to our understanding of our history.
One of the most interesting things about Zechariah, and it's kind of the conclusion I've got it into, is he blocked his trolls. After a while, he said, I don't want to argue with people. I don't want to waste my time trying to explain myself and justify myself. I'm doing these studies. I put my evidence meticulously before you, and I'm not going to waste my time arguing with people. And so he ignored a lot of things. For example, one of his so-called detractors said, there's no mention of Nibiru and blah, 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 blah. And there it is. You can just look at there's the pages in the Bible where it's mentioning Nibiru.
Yes.
It's like, it's just nonsense. And Zechariah didn't want to waste his time with this nonsense.
That's right, Sasha. I can remember sitting in many Sitchin seminars with you and Janet, and people would raise their hands and ask about other people's work, and he would say, well, I'm not going to comment on somebody else's work. If you want to rephrase that and ask me a question about my work, I'll address it. And then he would take the next question. He would put his audience in their place very quickly if we asked the wrong questions. Yeah.
Yeah, and he wouldn't put up with a lot of crazy questions too. We had to write the questions and submit it on a card.
That's right. They were censored. They were censored.
Yeah, everything was censored.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Well,
so you knew him. I did. When did you meet him?
I met him the same time that I met both of you. I remember meeting Sasha in the book department at that Santa Fe seminar that it was actually not his seminar he was running. It was put on by another group.
By us.
Phenomenon something or other?
No, we put it on. We're the prophets.
Oh,
Yeah,
the Prophets Conference. The Prophets Conference. Right. So that was when I met Zachariah, and that's the same time I met Sasha, I remember. We were standing looking at a Tantra book. And Sasha was saying, oh, it's a good one. You should consider it. So that's the first time I met Zachariah, and I was so impressed with him. I met many, many people there that I ended up becoming very good friends with and had long-lasting friendships for many years, like Jim Graypeck, who was doing a little interview there. You might remember he interviewed a number of people. And then I eventually used those interviews with Jim's permission to do a memorial video. So people listening might enjoy wanting to see that. It's up online. They can watch it for free. It's called We Remember Zachariah. But the easiest way to find it is to go to On Wings Productions, and it's just listed right there in some of my free things you can watch online. So it's on. Yeah, so if anyone's tuning in and they want to note that to go watch a nice little memorial, that was done at that Prophets Conference in, I think that was 2000. I think it was like February of 2000.
I thought it was 1999 or 98.
It might have been 99. It might have been, or 98. I knew it was somewhere right around there in that period of time.
Right. Because I had just met Sasha. One of the early things we did was go to this Zechariah conference certification program. So how did you hear about it to make that decision, and what drew you to fly across the country?
Right, on the spur of the moment. I think I found out about it about 5 days before. I had been reading and studying the Flower of Life material that was written by Drunvalo Melchizedek. And I had been to a couple of his teaching seminars. And he often spoke about Zechariah. And I kept thinking, I gotta look this guy up. And finally, I think I bought one of his books and I was reading it. These were early days also of the internet, and I wasn't probably as savvy online as many other people were. And someone, I think, called me up, one of my goddess girlfriends in Philadelphia, and said, do you know Zachariah is speaking at an event in Santa Fe next weekend? And literally, like 5 of us sat down and booked flights right away. And we decided to go.
Hold on 1 second.
Hold on, you guys. Hold on, you guys. Glenn, turn off your video, please. It's causing feedback. Click the video icon. We're doing audio only.
Yeah. Okay, so hang on.
Okay, sorry, guys. Didn't mean to interrupt.
It's okay.
Okay. So, Jen, I want to introduce you to, or I am introducing you to Glenn Bogue. He's a dear friend of us. He's an Anunnaki researcher. He goes around the planet and investigates things up close and personal. He's written 5 books around the subject and on the subject, and you two need to meet.
It's my great pleasure. Nice to meet you, Glenn.
Jennifer, do you live in Radnor, Pennsylvania by chance?
I do. And did you used to also live in Radnor, on Radnor-Chester Road?
So this is the young lady I met like 15 years ago.
And we danced our heart out together.
And she is by far the best dancer maybe in the world.
We met. I thought I knew you. I thought I recognized you. We met at a fundraiser for parents adopting children from Russia. And it was in Glenside, I think, near the Glenside Theater or something like that. Yes. A very good friend of mine, Mary Kane and Bruce Siegel, had adopted a child who was about 5 or 6 years old from Russia, and they invited me to go to this wonderful fundraiser with my friend Amy Gordon. And I do remember meeting you and thinking, oh my God, you live right around the corner from me.
And then I went to Zachariah's last talk, maybe of his life, in Philadelphia in 2011. And he said, go and see my filmmaker, Jennifer, out in Redner, Pennsylvania.
He did.
So I drove out there, and it's the same house.
Yeah.
It's the same house.
I died in 2010.
I helped to arrange that. I helped to arrange that speaking engagement he did in Philadelphia. It was at the Free Library, and Zach wanted me to introduce him. And I actually had I think a family wedding in Chicago to go to, and I couldn't say no. I had an obligation to go with my husband, and Zach was so mad at me. And so I said, look, don't worry. My good friend Grace Schuler will introduce you. Don't worry. She'll do a great job. She does this all the time. She runs information management and technology professional organizations in the city. She's a great introducer, and she took great care of him. But, yep, he was quite ticked off
So
at me.
Janet says I go around the world to meet people. I only had to go a mile from my house, Janet.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my.
So Glenn and I are actually buddies, although I had no idea, Glenn, that you knew so much about Zachariah and that you had written about him, and you probably don't know about some of the film work I've done. So we have some catch up to do.
Yes.
We'll catch up here.
Yes, it's really
How
great.
did you end up dancing together?
Well, when you see a
at
handsome
this
guy,
fundraiser.
yeah, when you see a handsome guy that knows how to dance, you kind of like position yourself and make yourself available and like kind of do a few moves so he notices you. And Glenn came right over and said, "Ooh, would you like to dance?" And I said, "Oh, does a bear, do something in the woods?" Right? I was yelled like, "Yes, I'll be happy to dance." If I wasn't happily married, I would have run off with him somewhere and, done
no
dancing.
Kidding. Jennifer is a fantastic dancer. It was just 3 hours of just splendor.
It was. It really was. We
So,
just danced our hearts.
In a different universe, you're married and have 10 kids. We got it. Okay. Or past life.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, then I found out later after the dance-a-thon that this fundraiser, this is like months later, maybe even a couple of years later, I guess, that I ended up at her house at Radnor, knocking on the door, and she comes to the door. I said, "I know you." And so away we went with our backgrounds with Zachariah Sitchin, which was like shocking.
That's
because it's not that well known, Zachariah Sitchin, especially on the main line of Philadelphia.
That's right. It's a very conservative community. Yeah.
Yeah. So continue on with the show.
This is half the show right now. The grand reunion. This is a Sitchin reunion online. We're going to have to get more of our. Now, Jen, have you kept track of these people? How many of us are still on this side of the veil? Idea?
No, I do not know whom we have lost besides Zachariah, but I do keep in touch with a number of people. In fact, I don't know if you know the name Susie Strouch, but Susie attended many of the Zach programs, and then Susie and I and a couple of other people, about 6 of us, went on a trip that I actually organized to the Pergamon Museum. I think this was probably right before Zach passed away. It was probably in 2010. We went to the Pergamon in Berlin to see a very special exhibit, and it was called Myth or Fiction. And it was Sumerian artifacts that had been in private collections from all over the world. And these collections were brought to this museum for a one-time only show. Or maybe the show toured. It might have toured to a few museums like the Louvre and the British Museum. But Barry Baumgartner, who used to travel with Zach and was like a research assistant with him, Susie Strouch, Chris, do you remember Chris, Dr. Chris Evans, she went, Joyce Thielen went, and myself, and I think there was one other person I'm blanking on, but we all flew over. We tried to really convince Zach to come with us. And we, of course, photographed many, many times over the very famous cylinder seal with the solar system on it. We snuck in our cameras because we were not allowed to photograph because these were privately owned items in many cases. But there was it was a fabulous collection. So Susie and I traveled quite a bit. We also went to Easter Island, Peru, Bolivia. So we were in Pumapuca and many, many sites in Peru. We went on to Easter Island together, and we also went to Turkey together and to Göbekli Tepe together. In memory of Zach and Zach's teachings. And actually, I brought 16 people on that trip to Turkey. And about 15 people to these different places in Peru. Now, I didn't organize the trips to Peru and Turkey. There were about 30 people on those trips. But I went with Brian Forrester and Robert Schock. I follow quite a bit. Although Robert sometimes has comments that he thinks Zach was a little off the wall, but there are many things that he does acknowledge that Zach was probably right about. Certainly that Zach was a Bible scholar and that he brought quite a bit of attention to the academic world, that there is research to be done. Certainly future generations that are not bound by such I don't know what the right word is, but conservative thinking. Lots of academic institutions are afraid to stick their neck out. But now that we've had more and more disclosure on the UFO topic, in fact, even this week, Avi Loeb was back in the mainstream news again, saying that we definitely have ET visiting our solar system, if not our Earth. And then this wonderful Israeli. This was I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janet.
This was who was the first person?
The first person I mentioned.
No, the second.
Well, I can't remember the name of the Israeli NASA representative who was part of the Israeli Space Force, but he actually came out and said and made national news. It was picked up by the Israeli press, and it was in in some kind of Israel journal, but then it got picked up in the Washington Post and the New York Times as well and made mainstream news. This space scientist from Israel came out and said, E.T. has been here, and E.T. says we are not ready. Humanity is not ready for the implications of direct contact, but other intelligences, more than one, is here and is engaged with humanity in limited capacities and in special programs. But the mainstream population is not ready to handle this news. So that, to me, was breaking news. And that happened.
Breaking news. Now,
I think
I missed the name.
The first person I mentioned was Avi Loeb. Yeah, the head of astronomy at, I want to say it's not Yale, it's, and not Berkeley. Harvard, thank you. The head of Harvard. I was thinking,
let me interrupt for a second. Tomorrow I'm about to put Avi Loeb's name into the Law Society of Toronto, where, Jennifer, they suspended me temporarily as a lawyer for arguing the Anunnaki principles.
Wow.
I was suspended for writing a book about the Black Madonna, and now I'm sending in tomorrow. They say, well, UFOs, what a weirdo. I said, well, how about the name Avi Loeb? How about that name at Harvard University?
Mm-hmm. In
so I'm
Toronto.
shocked at that name. Oh, yeah, I'm in Toronto now. So I left Philadelphia, and I moved back to Toronto, became an Indigenous lawyer.
Wow.
And so I got suspended for arguing unusual principles of the clan mother here, whose oral histories go back 200,000 years, mother to daughter, and repeats the story of Zechariah Sitchin.
Wow.
Yes. And I put them into the courts here. I forget the reason, because who owns the land of Canada? And we go back to the origins of the female, Eve, and they didn't know what the hell I was talking about. So now tomorrow, putting an Avi Loeb, and here you are giving his name tonight.
Yes. Do you know, Glenn, you can call upon the former defense minister, Paul Hellyer. Call upon him for help, and I can pass his information off to you if you don't have it. I'm friendly with him. Yeah.
I get to him through Ellen Brown, the lawyer in L.A., the president of the Public Banking Institute.
Great.
Who knows him? Yeah.
Great. And do you know Claude Limburger up in Canada? He's in Mississauga. Claude Limburger. Okay, he's another author and part of the MUFON network. Do you ever connect in with the MUFON group with Sid Bundy? Okay, well, I'll pass on Sid Bundy's information to you too. He's the MUFON National Director, and I got to work closely with him because I ran the MUFON National Symposium in Philadelphia just 2 years ago. And he's just a great guy, and whenever I am in Canada, which used to be regularly before the borders were closed, now I know you're in Toronto, I will look you up. I own some property up in Stratford at the Shakespeare Festival.
I'm actually up near Ottawa now, living in the rural area to get out of Toronto, not because of COVID, but for other reasons, because the Indigenous community up here is pretty vibrant.
That's wonderful.
So, but I was shocked at the conservative thinking you were mentioning and trying to figure out a way to break through. So now it's become human rights. It's become a human rights issue in Toronto at the Law Society that you violated my human rights because, as David Icke says, just because I'm the only one to believe this, and I'm not, but as far as they know I am, that's a violation of my freedom of thought and freedom of religious belief.
Yes.
And at the Law Society. So let's go. Let's
Wow. Well, that is a great inroads to make because I'll just mention Ovi's been very impressed when I've gone to the Stratford Festival, which is the largest Shakespeare festival in the world. It makes up actually a majority of the economy of the province of Ontario. When you go to sit down at a show anywhere in the whole country of Canada, before each show, they recognize the indigenous cultures. Have you noticed that, Glenn? I don't know if you've been to a mainstream performance in Toronto or at a theater, but they recognize, and I can't remember the names of the tribes, but they mention like the names of 4 or 5 different tribes. I want to say the Anagua is one of them, and they just recognize the elders and the indigenous.
Okay, but what happens, Jennifer, is that they recognize the corporate bands, and this is a little bit off topic with Sitchin's topic, but it's really not because the corporate bands are just sub-corporations of Washington, D.C. And they'll say this, but they don't give any rights to anybody. So we had a judge in Ottawa say the nation's capital is on Indigenous land. And that triggers our charter that our government has to vacate that property.
Wow.
That's Canadian law. And we're hoping to bring that principle down into the U.S. over this fight over Trump and Biden tomorrow, that the American people have another way to go. They can declare their indigenous rights, because if you're born in Philadelphia, you are indigenous. You're indigenous to Turtle Island. You're not indigenous to the United States government, but you are indigenous on Turtle Island, North and South America.
Well, what's underneath all of that is theft and enslavement of the native populations, and failure to recognize legitimate governments like the Cherokee and the Iroquois, and so ultimately they're doing bullshit to keep you from exercising your skill as a lawyer because they're wrong.
Well, what we introduced into the court was the fact that George Washington really worked for the Virginia Company, and when the King of France brought when the King of England brought the Quebec Act here of 1774, that's what pissed off George Washington. The Virginia boys wanted that land around the St. Lawrence, around Montreal, for themselves. And then the tea thing and the tax, that was all later, 2 years later, but that's what really started it. Then George Washington fired the first shot of the Seven Nations War, the 7 Years War in the 1760s. And he fired the first shot. Then he began killing the Iroquois in Ohio, because he wanted the land all the way to the west. And so the United States is built, Jennifer, and I'm shocked because I lived there for 40 years. And my kids are still there in Philadelphia, by the way. But that this history has not been taught, that Dr. Lessin's talking about, that George Washington fired this first shot, killed a French diplomat, unarmed, and killed him. And that started the 7 Years' War, France against England. And then he starts killing the Iroquois. It's based on murder and mayhem and slavery.
Well, what's also, yes, it's a great tragedy because during the time of the Revolutionary War, the Indians were trying to figure out, all the indigenous nations were trying to figure out, well, who should we side with, right? There was a lot of back and forth. Do we side with the French? Do we side with, these Puritans that are, creating a militia to rebel against England? Do we side with England because that's the only way we can keep our sovereignty? So there was a lot of confusion. And I recall that, as you know, right near where we live in Valley Forge is where the troops wintered over the winter of, I believe it was 1776, and they were freezing and they had no food. Many of them had no shoes. They were starving. And as the local lore goes, Washington wasn't hanging out with the troops freezing in Valley Forge. He was making the rounds at all the local estates. And, there are all these legends, that he slept here. And then the second part of the sentence was, with my wife. I was amazed. I had an historian neighbor at once that pointed out all the local estates, where they were, and the fact that, some of them are still there, still standing, and that George Washington was known to have slept there and was having an affair with the wife. So he was quite a womanizer. But back to the Iroquois, his troops were freezing, and the Iroquois came and marched on foot and brought turkeys and corn and squash and, vegetables and apples and onions and potatoes, all these things that they grew. They marched down from upstate New York, around the Finger Lakes regions where they were. They marched out and brought like 2 to 3 months of food for Washington's armies because they had sided with the militia, to try to defeat the English. And then they went home, and after George Washington became president, then he ended up burning their fields about 2 to 3 years later and pushing the Iroquois out of their land. And it's really
into Canada, north of the border.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very, very few people know this. And it's really, there's so many sad pieces of our history that, and how far back will we go to really reclaim the sovereignty of humanity? And
well, let's go all the way. Let's go all the way back to 200,000 BC. I'm now reading a book called The Genius of the Few by Christian O'Brien. Do the Lessons or Jennifer know that book?
I don't think I do. I know a Chris O'Brien, but I don't know a Christian O'Brien. But that sounds like a great book. He's
an Anunnaki. He's a Sumerian cuneiform tablet expert. Contemporary, it seems to me, of Zechariah. He wrote 30 years of research in the Sumerian area in Iraq, and he's very close to Zechariah's theories. So he's a separate source. And I had this book 10 years ago. I left it in Sweden on a trip, and then my girlfriend just brought it back to me at Christmas time. And in there, he's talking about the fact that in Sumer, where the Garden of Eden might have been as high north as the North Pole, where Admiral Byrd, discovered that you go past the ice and you get to a great mountain range and green valleys. That's what they seem to be describing, where they took Enoch, the ancient scribe Enoch, they took him up there to describe what was going on. But he speaks about the lowlands of Sumer, where the Watchers came down. And the Watchers mixed with the daughters of Eve and created this mongrel race, human beings, and they were then being instructed to kill each other. either King Anu was there or Enlil was there on the white throne, the Enoch, in this big grand council. And because they were fornicating with the daughters of Eve and giving them hidden secrets, which must be, I think, the Freemasons type of secret societies, and these secrets that are there. But they begin warring. They said they'll kill each other. We don't have to kill them. We're going to program them to kill each other. And isn't that what we see with Isn't that what we see with Washington and all this craziness?
It's always divide and conquer. It's still going on. That's why we have party politics.
Right, the Philistines against David's guerrillas.
Sure, get them fighting with each other, and then that's their undoing.
So we filed a lawsuit in
Go
Toronto for all the resources of Canada, the United States, the Caribbean, and South America. It's not a commercial lien, but it's a claim for the people who are born in Turtle Island. And so you have a separate jurisdiction of the indigenous people going back tens of thousands of years. And so we're hoping to take that through the not the Cherokee, but we know the Blackfeet out in Western Canada and Montana, and bring it down in through the middle of the United States.
Wow.
This saving land claim class action, and a class action can be 350 million people who want to claim back their natural resources, because Canada, Jennifer, is the richest country in the world in natural resources. The United States is seventh, and we're in a tie kind of with with Saudi Arabia and China, and that's why China's coming in through BC and have taken over British Columbia pretty much in an attempt to maybe even invade the United States.
I was going to ask you I've heard troops are on our borders and that they're in Toronto. I was going to ask you if you've seen them, or if you're just speaking economically, or you're speaking.
They were seen outside of Vancouver and filmed in Salt Spring Island outside Vancouver. Mm-hmm. I was just told that they were wiped out by the U.S. military in Nova Scotia, north of Boston. They were in mining shafts. 50,000 troops were wiped out by the U.S. military.
Wow, I heard that too.
So they are here. I believe they are here, and they're just enforcing their investment, enforcing their investment in the tar sands of Canada and Alberta, and other businesses that have come in with numbered companies. Now they're coming into San Francisco, into the tech valley, big tech, and taking control of those boards. But this really goes back to banking and back to the Knights Templar, where in 1107, the Knights Templar discovered this ancient genealogy. And it's my theory, I've been on the show before, and Jennifer, you have talked a little bit about this, that I go backwards into the fact that perhaps Jesus is not who we think he is. And these legends of Mithra and Dionysius and Tammuz are all legends of the same person. It's the son of man, N.C.A.A, and banking that was supposed to be, I guess it's an original form. The banking was really an international way for people to travel around, that you wouldn't have to go from London to Rome with a whole troop of protectors for your wealth.
Right.
But it never really transferred over because they killed the Knights Templar and stole the banking and became the central bank of Basel, Switzerland today. And so this ongoing fight, which really, I understand, came from the Orion system, because when Eve had to make a choice, she faced two Lord gods. I think she was facing Enlil, and she was facing Enki. And Enki offered her the knowledge. And Leo wanted her just to spit out more gold miners.
Right.
And when she chose to go with Enki, the son of man, and Enki's known as the son of man. So when she went with the son of Anu, King Anu, the man, then that's when Enlil called for the banking system, the jail, to come from the system Orion, star system. And onto the earth, and it's been this ongoing fight, which we're really facing, like Dr. Lessin said. This is it, man. We're in biblical times, even
yes.
before that.
Well, we certainly are. There are. It's unfortunate that if you haven't been awake for a number of years, there's so much going on. It's hard to know how to sort it out right now. And you have to know what your trusted sources are for information, right? Because things have become so politicized that people turn you off if you try to share certain things with them. They say, oh, you're a Trumper, or oh, you're a Democrat, or, they close their mind to the deeper issue that's really at hand, which comes down to our autonomy and our rights as human citizens, and to be, not living in a slave culture, and to have access to, healthcare and natural vitamins and food and resources, and not to take a vaccine if we don't want to. I mean, those rights are quickly, literally flowing through our fingers, and people aren't aware enough to kind of know how to close the grip on their hand and stand up and say, no, I choose. No, I haven't lost my rights as a citizen yet, and this is what I choose. It's very hard.
I'd say it's even, for me, it's even deeper. It's that the wisdom of the Native American peoples is that we have to consider the earth a being, that we have to listen to the earth. And it's time to shut up and listen and take some information from people that are really tuned in. And so it's not just reparations. We need each other to save the planet and save humanity.
Yes. It's a very, very deep subject, no matter how you address it. And the great thing is that no matter what your main passion is, you can make an impact, whether it's through music or through art or through politics or through law or through writing. But the act of communicating your truth is a very important, process.
Well, speaking of the vaccine, and the Lessons helped me learn this about maybe 4 years ago on a show we did, was that the vaccine interferes with the female ability to connect to the magnetic field, and it also interferes with the absorption of the precious metals, gold, silver, iridium. There's about 8 of them on the chemical chart. And Jennifer, it was those precious metals. A guy named David Wood wrote a book called Genesis about the ancient Egyptian symbols and what they mean. And in there is where I began to learn about the substance that females can produce every 14th and 28th day. And the Lessons taught me it's called Amrita. And I understand it as the Ormus molecule, which opens the Stargate. And so now the portal's open. The Earth is aligned to the center of the solar system, center of the galaxy, and we're aligned with the on the Mayan calendar date 2012. And now we can go. And I think the vaccine has something to do with preventing females from doing what they're designed to do: go through the Stargate with their counterpart.
Well, let me ask questions on this, because we've been all vaccinated. If you've ever given blood, received blood, had anything penetrate your skin, this is what I learned from all my secret space program. As soon as your body is penetrated by a needle, they can put in the nanobots. The other way, the delivery system is through the chemtrails. So we're vaccinated to go to school, and I was vaccinated. Most people in the 50s and 60s were vaccinated. That was element 1. So then they started spraying. So the element 1 has your genetic markers, your black, white, yellow, pink, purple. You were born in whatever you received. I received mine in 59, right? So it has. So these things can later on be turned on by other things that are introduced. And this is biochemical warfare, and it goes back to the Anunnaki. they repeatedly released biochemical warfare to call the population. And some of those things are still in our ground and in our environment, and they get activated when we go in and we, melt the polar ice and we dig up the rainforest. And so these things are getting continually activated. And this has been going on because they never wanted our population to get this large. And so this is part of the Agenda 21. We're going to reduce the population. They only need like 500,000 of us to have enough viable pairs to reproduce and continue the population. They don't need this many people. So this is part of the grand agenda that's been going on for years and years and years. So my question about the vaccine, let me get back to that. So we've already have vaccines. I remember I got a flu shot once before I knew all this stuff. I was on Johnson Atoll. So what you're saying is once you receive this, it's blocked. But then I came back and met Sasha. So no, I've been able to travel like those did, like Nicene did in the Emerald Tablets. I've been able to travel through the universe, getting into a high orgasmic state using Tantra and being able to have an ejaculatory orgasm with Amrita. So that did not stifle that. So you're saying, Glenn, that this modern vaccine, which there's 5 or 6 varieties now, maybe up to 10, is going to shut down our ability to astrally project and travel through the cosmos and awaken and become conscious. Is that what you're saying is going to happen? And how do you know that?
What I'm saying was that I came across a website around the time that I knew Jennifer. I came across a website called Alexandria with an H. And that's that's the best one I ever saw on Ormus molecule, the ORMUS molecule. And a scientist named Hudson was on a farm somewhere in the Midwest of the U.S., and he noticed that the rock was levitating off the ground. Well, he didn't check his glasses. He took it into his lab, and he's the guy who rediscovered the fact that it had the 8 precious metals inside the rock that you can levitate with it. It does 3 different things. So then the pharmaceuticals got hold of this research from 1985 onward and have gone full bore trying to figure out what's they're called the high spin state of these 8 precious metals. And so, of course, Jesus taught us to eat the gold, so drink the wine and eat the fish, and the grapevine goes down the deepest, Janet, into the ground where it can find and pull up the gold and make it organic for the female. And then the seawater has lots of gold in it, but we can't get it out yet. But the fish sure can because they're swimming in it, and then we can eat the fish. And so I think that the Christing or that the anointing of the Magdalene, the Black Madonna on Enki Jesus, I call him, that was the bridal rite that was going to go on in the bedroom that night of this tantric experience that you have now lived in Hawaii. And so, we're a very advanced group on this phone call, like as always, of these people around the world who are researching this stuff and beginning to piece it all together. But I think the pharmaceutical companies have just figured it out now after, 25 years.
That's very, very interesting.
Go ahead.
I have to say I don't know as much about it as you do. I have heard of the process of consuming some of this white powder, which is some type of gold powder or gold dust, and it helps to awaken and aliven your ability to process precious metals in your body, and it's a rejuvenative process to some extent, and maybe maybe the vaccines have chemicals in them that lower your immunity or lower your ability to process precious metals. I'm honestly not sure. I have been studying about calcium and osteoporosis because I'm in that age range now, and I do know that your bones are a very interesting mesh and mix of essential minerals, and it's not just calcium. You need a whole litany of precious metals that you can absorb and ingest, like iron and other things like that, that help your bones make a strong mesh to stay strong. So I've been trying to make improvements, and I have, according to my last medical test, I've been able to improve my bone density. But I am very suspicious of the vaccine. To me, it's just a little too convenient to have a worldwide virus and to force everyone to want to take the vaccine. Usually when there's something nefarious going on, there's an event. It's like, I call it cause and effect. And yes. It's a lot easier to get people to want to move in a particular direction than to try to force them to move in that direction at gunpoint. So if people believe it's in their best interest to take a vaccine or to have an invasion into your privacy, right? Since 9/11, we've all supported, oh yes, we should have screening. We should allow people to listen into our cell phones and watch our laptops and, censor our emails, and because we want to find out if there's a terrorist in our midst and, who's the enemy combatant. But as it turns out, it could very easily be people like all of us that are discussing these ancient ideas and these current theories. We could be considered enemy combatants because we are asking people to think deeply and to question, the medical community that seems to be moving, at marching speed, right, at lightning speed towards, international vaccinations. It's quite concerning to me.
Yeah, Jennifer, if they want to do this, we've been told this since Orwell's 1984. This is an agenda that's been out for, 50, 60 years of how they control, and they get us in an eternal global war, and they have three major nations, which appear to be Russia, China, and the United States, and all the related parties that are aligning with the different factions. And so, we're being funneled into this alternative reality, which is going to basically require you to have a vaccine if you want to travel. This is like Nazi Germany, and my dad processed it with me before he died because he was in World War II. The bottom line is, if they want to, eventually you're going to end up in the hospital. In 2016, I had a cat bite. I had a choice. The infection was going up my arm. I was going septic. Do I go to the hospital? There I was for 10 days with an intravenous line in my arm. So I chose to stay alive, but it's like eventually with, our aging population, you're going to end up in the hospital or else you're going to end up dead on your living room floor. So there's no way really around this. So we have to reach to some kind of higher solution because we can drown in this and die in this. And, and that's what I think this is. This is about spirituality and consciousness movement rather than wallowing in negativity and anyway, but this debate can go on and on. But what do you want to say?
The only way, Janet, to protect yourself is to claim the land, and this is part of what's called admiralty law, which in the 7 Years' War of the 1760s, that ended with the Treaty of Paris, it was a world war on the waters of to get the colonial riches and bring them back to Europe. And so some had argued that we're still, to me, as a lawyer, that we're still under admiralty law. Well, so the Crown of England can only get its legal structure within a quarter inch of the land. Because they weren't born here in North America, they can't get it down onto the land. And so when you claim the land, you are then free from this cabal. But other than that, you're not going to win. They're going to force you.
I would just say that, the one thing that we can claim, or the function of our travail now, is to let us feel our unity. We need each other to survive. We need that's what we're realizing. It's painful, but that's the lesson, and it's there for us.
Okay, we have 2 minutes before the break comes. Glenn, do you want to take us out to the break? You were giving us a list about
what Jennifer was alluding to with the what you're consuming. This ormus molecule, Hudson warned the fellow who just rediscovered Ormus molecule, do not take this in a bottle form. Don't take it in kitchen sink distilling processes, because you can introduce the heavy metals into the liquid. And why would you do that when it's the female, when it's the fruit that we were given, the grapes and the seawater fish, that has these precious metals in it that the female takes in, and then she double distills this, somehow is my theory, inside of her womb, and she produces this magical substance, which can raise intelligence, correct any DNA problems in your genetics, and it can open the Stargate. And so in round 2, I want to open up the discussion to the fact that we were in Ethiopia in 2018, and on the calendar, Jennifer, the curator of the Museum of Ethiopia said that it's 2011 on his calendar. I said, yo, Chief, you want to flip that chart a little bit? He said, we keep very careful time. So right now, we're 7 years off. We're just after 12/21/2012. It's only 2013, 2014.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back in 5 minutes. We'll see you in 4 minutes. We'll see you more.
Okay.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take freedom!
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday, 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
Anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer... Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible! You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
download it to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Hello, hi everybody, and welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos, and I'm your host, Nicene Lessin, with Dr. Sasha, Alex Lessin, producer Deborah DeFranco, and you're listening to Revolution Radio, Studio B. And our panel today is with Jennifer Stein and Glenn Bogue, Sitchin, and the Anunnaki. But before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind you to please go over to the donation button on revolution.radio. The top left tab, you can make your one-time donation, and the Patreon button you can use to make your recurring donation. We do thank you very much for making your donation and allowing us to continue bringing you shows like this. Thank you so much. Okay, Dr. Lessin, what would you like to say before we're going to bring back Glenn, and he's going to pick up where he left off. Go ahead.
Well, we're talking about the importance from the in the ancient writings and from our modern knowledge of the ability to reach the Stargate, to have higher realms of integrative consciousness as part of Tantra, as part of the kind of confluent field that people can make when they have sex with female ejaculation as part of the ritual.
Right, and the Anunnaki introduced Tantra to the planet Earth, so that's one thing that's key. And when Anu came down to visit Inanna, she was trained in the sacred arts before she was able to...
by Antu.
By Antu, before she was able to have this ritual, and the other Anunnaki were outside meditating, quote unquote, whatever they were doing, to enhance this experience. So anyway, we have a history of it. Go ahead, Glenn. Where did we leave off? Refresh our memory and then take it from there.
Well, we left off with a mass confusion, or no knowledge even to have a discussion about what Dr. Lessin just said and what you two and I discussed 5 years ago, that this substance does exist, Amrita, or the Ormus molecule. And the very famous Lawrence Gardner, he apparently died of esophageal cancer. And I was on the phone with his best friend, Edmund Marriage, who's the nephew of Christian O'Brien, a genius of the few. That's how I bought the book, was through Edmund Marriage. He runs a society, in England. And up comes Lawrence Gardner's name by accident. He says, well, he died of esophageal cancer. And he did take this Ormus molecule in bottle form, which is toxic. You can't drink gold. You can't drink dirt. You'll die if you drink enough dirt. It has to come through the plant kingdom or the fish kingdom to be absorbed.
Right.
So
was it also called monoatomic gold?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. Right.
It contains the Ormus molecule, which instead of having a proton and a neutron, it has a mono core, and goes into a high spin state. So when you put gold fillings into the human skull, dentists have taught me this, some very odd things begin to happen. And it's called a high spin state. And that's where we're going back to now, because I think when Ninmah fashioned Eve, she had an okay day with Adam. But when she fashioned Eve, I think she didn't trust the men, and she put an extra punch inside the female sexual organs that one day would culminate in intergalactic travel for all of us. And that day is here now.
So let me just add this about the best way. This is kind of getting on the border. I hope we don't get censored, but I'll try to say this diplomatically. The best way to ingest the female ejaculate is by being orally pleasuring her while she has an emeritable orgasm. So I don't know how you bottle that. How could Lawrence Gardner have that unless he
girlfriend?
His wife.
No. Two things I'll say. What people are doing is and maybe Lawrence Gardner did this. I don't know Lawrence Gardner, but I know of him, and maybe he got this on the mail order, and they send you this monatomic atom that Jennifer knows about, and you can go online. There's lots of companies are making it, but Hudson warns you can't make it that way. You're bringing in the heavy metals will drop in at I think -10, whatever the thing is, and -11 as a power that's going to. It begins to drop out the precious, toxic metals begin to fall into the liquid, and you're not good enough in your kitchen sink to make this and then bottle it and sell it on the internet. It has to come through the female where it's perfectly made safe by her liver and her internal orgasm. She's designed for this. And so, who would want
this? Is exactly this. This is exactly the same thing as the Earth. It's toxic to drive water into the earth to drive the gold out, like the gold mining companies do. And it's got to come in an organic way. It's exactly the same as the earth as it is with human beings.
I love it. I just love it. So I'll be graphic with you because this is a high-end show. So my fiance at the time said, I'm not going on that show with the Lessons. I mean, they're like the tantric weirdo. There's no way. And she's with a bunch of men, and it's too weird. So Dr. Lessin taught an hour on each chakra gland. How I know when it's full. And Sasha says, you'll know. And so the next day, we got to the third hour. Where did you learn that? I said, well, on the show last night.
Oh,
remember,
wow.
we had the Dark Star. We had the Dark Star author on. What's his name?
Oh, what's his name? The Dark Star. Oh, from England, the astronomer. Oh, what's his name? Anyway, we're drawing a blank, but yes.
So we weren't talking about this, Jennifer. We weren't talking about this at all. But the show has a great way of just taking off, and this is where we ended up.
That's wonderful. I love it. I love it. Sitchin would have been very proud of us.
Key to immortality. If we want to achieve physical immortality, we have to figure out what's going on, and so this doesn't ever get discussed because it's wrapped around sexuality. You can't talk about sex, but this is what the Anunnaki were doing, and they basically lived millions of years, and that's our potential. But we're being killed off, between 50 and 100 years because it's monetizing our medical. We've got to stop making profits from our medical information, for our healing arts, and it has to go back to this is free for everybody. How do we heal? We heal by getting all of our chakras aligned and our kundalini awakened. And then nothing infects us, including the viruses. The Anunnaki were immune to all these infections that they put out into the planet, all these viruses. That's the key. They didn't catch anything. They never got sick.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. you were saying.
The men can't produce this, as far as I know, and the whole homosexual thing I haven't figured out yet. But I'm just going to start that research next month, and not personally, but I have friends now who are gay who I didn't know before. I wasn't part of that group, but I'm not sure that the men can produce this according to the ancient Egyptian texts in this book called Genesis by David Wood, and so. It's still the female that does this. And once you do this, like two things happened to me. On a romantic afternoon in the Caribbean, we heard a click. Now, why would you stop lovemaking when you hear a click in the room? And we were being slid off the sofa into a capsule. And my fiancée at the time denied it ever happened for 10 years. And after we broke up, she admitted that it did happen. It was just too weird. And so
say that again. You slid off the sofa into a what?
We were being taken off the sofa in the Caribbean, and a beautiful view of the Caribbean Ocean. It was, it was a holiday time, a Christmas time, and I'm sure there was in my imagination there was a silver cylinder there, open. It was open, and we were being slid into the cylinder, and we were going. I don't know where we were going. We stopped making love, and we got up, and what the hell is that? So I'm in Toronto, and a friend of mine comes to me. I met online, just a friend of mine, a dating site. I met her. She's a real good friend of mine even to today. And brings this friend from outside Toronto who's on a dating site, and he meets a girl about 5 years younger than him. She's about 38. He's 43, and they're making love. And next thing I know, he flies out of his body, and then she flies out of her body, and then he comes back in. She comes back in. They get dressed, and they never see each other again. They don't know what the hell hit them. Because there's no training for it.
It's overwhelming. They don't know what the hell happened. Yes, they run away from each other.
That's right. So I had a fellow on my construction site in Philadelphia around the time that I knew Jennifer. I was working construction in Philadelphia, a black guy on the crew. And I heard black guys, pretty big and, pretty, robust. And, well, what's it like? He goes, well, some girls are okay and some girls are not so okay. But one girl, I was 19. Oh my God, I loved her. I put her over the kitchen table and we were going at it. And we looked down, Glenn, and our feet were disappearing up to our thighs. And I said, holy shit. I said, did you do oral sex? Yeah. And you loved her? Yeah. And she vegetarian? Yes, because that's where you're getting the ormus molecules from. Well, he pulled his pants. I said, what'd you do that? He said, I pulled my pants up, went home. I never saw her again. And he loved her. And he loved her.
It was too overwhelming, I guess.
Too overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's because where we are at the black hole now. Because don't forget, in Harry Potter, they mention Nicholas Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone, and that's the ormus molecule. It's a dot within the circle. The lapis elixir it's referred to as, and the astronomers can't figure out what the lapis elixir is. It's an elixir from the lap, duh. But Nicholas Flamel in the 1350s achieved the great work. This is according to the Temple of Revelation book, and they said that he achieved the great work with his wife. So either Mrs. Flamel was an astrophysicist, or she was really good, or she had a great diet and was really good. So it was sexual.
If we could even go a step deeper, Jan and I look at relationship as a spiritual path, and that what we really learn about is our disowned self that are manifest in what we dislike or judge or overrate in the other person. And so that it's not just the sex, but that is a coherent that you can feel energetically, but it's the coherence of two aware egos who are no longer dualistic, but see one another in each other.
Absolutely. And I honestly think...
Look at the love story. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I think that Sasha's definitely, hitting the nail on the head of the hammer, or the hammer on the top of the nail. From my 65 years on this planet, I have come to appreciate and understand that it's only once you're older and you're in a secure relationship where you kind of let down your boundaries enough to be open to hearing from another how they observe and reflect back to you who and what you are and what's going on and the dynamics of the relationship, can you really begin to explore yourself as an adult. And in that process, you really can't see something in another unless you possess it yourself. And unless you've played with it, studied it, mastered it, or are trying to master it. And it doesn't matter if it's a good quality or a bad quality. The thing that upsets you the most often is when you see the same qualities you possess in another and they're reflecting them back to you. And if you don't like these qualities or they're things you refuse to acknowledge about yourself, they upset you in the other person. And you blame the other person for it, but really you couldn't see it in the other person unless you possess those same qualities yourself. So I think it's through relationship that you can really see and learn to process in your own ego. It's something they actually teach in Torah as well. When you go in and study Jewish mysticism or even just study Torah, you have to study with a study partner. So there's two of you studying and on this journey together, because it's only in relationship to another that you can process certain, fundamental principles that you need to learn to mature and evolve spiritually and emotionally into a more fully awakened human.
So I want to bring this back to you, Glenn, to explain about the wedding at Cana. But N.C.A.A and N.C.A.A were in divine partnership. They had been denied each other because N.C.A.A ended up in a political marriage with N.C.A.A. I remember with Cana. He loved her. He put his children with her, but he still was always in love with N.C.A.A. And eventually they ended up getting together. She was the Black Madonna. She was forbidden to ever marry. So Glenn's going to bring this on home, but so one of the things that they did was they could have artificially created males. He wanted boy children, but the children that were viable were the ones that were conceived naturally through this orgasmic tantric mating. They were the ones that were most viable, the most powerful and vibrant. And anyway, so that was critical. It had to be through this tantric lovemaking. You would conceive the children, and these were the powerful children that came forth. And I think that's part of why they ended up being almost sterile. Few children were being born at the end there on the Biru, and so they really celebrated when Anana was born, because these children were not coming as rapidly like humans could have them like
But she was
rats.
a midget.
Yeah, and Anana was a midget. So Glenn, go back to your theory that Jesus is Enki and N.C.A.A is Mary. And how did this tie into, they finally got to get married at the wedding at Cana? And that's actually, Jesus is Enki and Enki is Mary, getting married at Cana.
Well, we know from the history of the Anunnaki that Ninmah had a child out of wedlock with Enlil, Ninurta, and both of their names were blackened. My theory is that Enlil is recognized in ancient Egypt as the Black Osiris, and Ninmah was never to marry again. Osiris could, El could, but Ninmah could not. She's the Black Madonna. So when Janet, always leading the way, says that he loved Ninmah from his youth, that is, of course, a phrase from the Song of Solomon. And my theory is that Enki left from ancient Sumer, Iraq, went to Cairo and became Set Enki, and there he killed Osiris and cut off his penis, and then Ninmah, Isis, she recovered all 13 parts but couldn't find the penis. But as Lynn Picknick says in Temple Revelation, for some reason Isis leaves her lover Osiris, who is Enlil, leaves him and goes with the assassin into Jerusalem. And I think that Enki became Jesse, the father of David, who was Serpentine. Jesse's the father. He's not some poor shepherd boy. He is the father of David. And David is a big strapping guy. And then Jesse marries the daughter of David and becomes Solomon the stepson. And he brings the woman of the tree, Ninmah, into Jerusalem, heading toward this royal marriage. And with that, they were both kicked out by Osiris, Yahweh, or known as Enlil in Sitchin's work. They get kicked out, and that's when they end. They go to Greece first, and then they come back up the River Jordan, because Jesus comes up the River Jordan, and he comes with his dove, and that dove was Ninmah. And there, because Jerusalem, its original name, according to Margaret Starbird, in her book, The Woman with the Alabaster Jar, Jerusalem's original name is Ariel. The name of the mermaid in Little Mermaid, the Disney movie. And Jerusalem's Ariel, and she says it means she'll come there dressed as a bride. So I think Enki Jesus was always preparing Jerusalem for this royal wedding, which was forbidden by King Anu after she had a child out of wedlock. And she leaves Egypt and leaves Osiris behind and heads for this marriage in Jerusalem. And that is the wedding of Cana in the Gospel of John. And there they have the ceremony. There they have the ceremony of the anointing of the head and the feet at the king's table. The king reclines at the table, and then as Enki wants to take over the whole world kingship, and now he's being anointed by Ninmah, who's left Enlil, Osiris, Yahweh, and now she's gone over to and married him at Cana, and 300 years later, the Catholic Church was formed, and they blackened that bitch. She became the whore and the prostitute for leaving Osiris and going with Enki. And that's what the Knights Templar found under the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem in 1107.
What did they find?
They found the genealogy of Enki and Ninmah.
Right.
And I say that for several reasons. Huh? I say that because the Cathars, who were killed by the Vatican in 1244, had the Knights Templar secrets with them, and they relied on the Carpocratians' secrets that they got directly from Mary Magdalene and carried it through generations. The women carried it through generations from Mary Magdalene to the Cathars in 1244. And that's why the Templars were killed. And the Cathars.
And I talked to a woman who owned one of the libraries. So in the libraries underneath the royals' houses in the British Isles in the UK, they had these libraries that they got all these. During the Crusades, they took all these books back to England, and Lawrence Gardner was given the invitation to come in and study them and translate them. So that was one of the main sources. He went to all these royals have these libraries that are thousands of years old, and he got to go and translate and see them firsthand. Only a few people could touch them. So that's the end of that story. Oh, and then the virgin birth. How do you explain the virgin birth? I mean, what was that about? How could that be Ninmah?
The virgin birth, you mean in Jerusalem? The virgin birth.
Mary, how was Mary Ninmah, and what's with the virgin birth? Yeah.
Because the virgin birth didn't occur in Jerusalem. The Jews are right. It occurred back in Sumer, back when the Immaculate Conception was done. Between the virgin birth was in a petri dish with the ovum of an ape and the sperm from a lordling from planet X. That's the virgin birth. And that image is kept through those 26 saviors, which are all the Virgin Mother with the baby, the male infant, kept all through, Dionysius, Tammuz, Mithra. It's always kept in the legends. And it came forward to Jerusalem because in the Gospel of John and Mark, there's no nativity scene. There's no virgin birth. It was added in 300 years later in Luke and Mark. But Luke and Mark are built Luke and Matthew are built on Mark. And Mark does not have a nativity scene. This couple swims up the River Jordan, teaches people like crazy, the way that in Lick Titicaca, Manco Capac and Mama Oclo came out of to the Aztecs. They came out of Lake Titicaca, the way they came out of the Gulf of Mexico, the way they came out of the South China Sea as Fuxi and Nuhua. But you have to go culture to culture to find these two characters, fish gods, coming out of the water who are married to their half-sister, Jennifer. Mm-hmm. Like, who's marrying the half-sister? St. Paul said, we're taught to marry our half-sister. Like, I don't know about you guys. I don't know about Sasha, but the half-sister, I'm not too sure about. So the story of the fish gods is all over the world. Isis and Osiris, they're entwined fish tales. Same in Peru, right. Same in Fuxi and Nuhua. Look them up. But now in China, guys, we had guests here at our Airbnb from China. They couldn't speak much English, but they told me that the symbol for Enki, for Fuxi, was so complicated, they don't teach it anymore since the Mao Revolution. They don't teach it anymore. It's lost.
Wow.
And we all each have the divine couple archetype as a fractal within us.
Right.
That's right.
So, Jennifer, I know you have questions. I can feel you.
I'm not as much of a Bible scholar as Glenn is, and I'm so impressed with these ideas to consider. But when we come back from the break, I do want to ask him about Turtle Island. And
we don't have that break. We're got another half an hour or less.
Ask him now.
Ask him now.
Oh, okay, very good. I thought we had to have a break right at 7:30 my time. So, what I'm curious about, Glenn, is what geographically makes up the indigenous term for Turtle Island? What you said, if you're born in Philadelphia, you were born on Turtle Island. So I wasn't born in the city of Philadelphia. I was born in the suburbs. But does that, what geographically is considered Turtle Island? Is that
For sure, it's North America.
Oh.
Turtles have a map. If you opened up a turtle shell, they have a map with all the rivers. Apparently, I haven't opened a turtle, but apparently I'm taught this, that the turtle has the map of North America on its shell, and all the rivers are there. And then my nation is the Métis Nation. I didn't learn, Jennifer, until I came home from Philadelphia to Toronto, that my father lied to us, and his mother was Métis, which is mixed blood of the French from France and the people from Canata, Bolivia. And so the Bolivians came up the Amazon River, having a great time with the women, and vice versa. And then into the Caribbean, they mated with the Arawak and the Carib, and then up through the Mississippi, bringing this ancient DNA from Peru, from the gods that came down from the heavens. So not only did they come down in Sumer, they came down in the mountains of Peru. Yeah. And this advanced sperm came up. So Turtle Island really then became South America, the Caribbean, and North America. So you are a citizen of the United States Corporation in Washington since 1871, which is when the D.C. Act of Washington was passed, which is a bankruptcy act. You bankrupt.
Right.
But then you can also be, at least in Canada, the Supreme Court here has said you can also be indigenous. So you are indigenous to Turtle Island, although you're not wearing feathers in your head yet. But that's a whole thing from race from England that taught us that Europeans would keep their German heritage when they came here. But their children who were born here, you're 65, so you're the same age as my clan mother from North Bay is in her late 60s. So how are you different than her?
Right.
You're born here.
Okay.
You pick up the magnetic field of Philadelphia. And by the way, a great researcher there. I found out that hill where the Philadelphia Museum that Rocky ran up for the audience.
Yes.
Jennifer knows it. That is the sacred mountain of the Lenape Queen. And that's why the Pope went there after he went into Congress. The next day he came to Philadelphia on top of that mountain. Because whatever rituals you perform on that mountain goes right into the center of the earth.
Interesting.
And so he attempted a coup d'etat against the indigenous chiefs of Turtle Island that day. That he was there. It was in 2015, September. Remember, he went to the Congress, he went to Philadelphia, then he went to the UN. All to put their laws, which become COVID now, whatever the hell these regulations are. But so your power, Jennifer, comes from there, being tied to that land, and just needs to be turned on. You know, some sessions with a clan mother from there would do it.
Very interesting. I have long since thought that Americans might eventually turn to the indigenous tribes for help if things got too bad. Maybe it would be a way to, undo the crimes of the past and recognize the indigenous for who they really are. And they might just be the ones that help, turn us back to civil communications, and
But you are the one. But Jennifer, let me interrupt you.
Yes.
You are the savior.
That's what I'm hearing you say. Yes.
You're born there. The natives are so beaten up, so bought up. The chiefs of these bands, Hillary Clinton's group, just gave half of Oklahoma. They were just given half of Oklahoma. The Clintons.
Really?
The other half's the Cherokee.
I didn't know.
The Cherokee belong in Georgia. They own Georgia, the Cherokee. It was stolen by Andrew Jackson. President Jackson, in 1830, marched them on the Trail of Tears out of Georgia in order to sell the real estate to get them back into the black from the debt from the Revolutionary War. And then in 1863, the bankers wanted to put them back into debt, so they started the Civil War over banking. And they killed 700,000 men. Now they're back in the red again. They're back in debt. It's one long war, debt, war, debt, war. Now you can change that. If Jennifer goes to find the Lenape people, which are a Algonquin-speaking nation and our cousins from here, if she goes to find them, she will find her magic. She'll be taught how to turn on her magic.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so Glenn, if we back even be in times, the indigenous people of the Americas, weren't they Yankees people? They were brought over, the Olmecs, and all these people were brought over. How did in your cosmology, and Dr. Lessin, in your cosmology, how did all these indigenous tribes get to the Americas to begin with? We have
the Jewish merchants, who were always the house Jews, they were always very good at handling the monies for the royal families of Central Asia. They found their way into Iran and Ahura Mazda, the sky gods, which the Jews don't believe in. They have Yahweh. But the sky god imagery was paid for by the Jews on these boats, trade boats that went from Iran through India. And in India, the sailors in the hold who were rowing the boat, it's Saturday night when they get there, sailors, and they're getting the tantric stuff from the Inanna's group in India and bringing it over with the black sailors into South America and Central America on the West Coast. That's a book called Gods of the Cataclysm, and he followed it very carefully, the connections between India, China, and South America. And the Olmec heads would be some kind of a giant offspring that was maybe with them rowing. I mean, who knows where it came from? But that's the route it came from. It came from Iran through India, picking up the tantric sex secrets through the islands, and then into North America from the West Coast.
Well, what do you have? What's your research showing? Go ahead, Sonny. We have different perspectives. It's fine. What's your research show?
It depends on how deep you go. The entire Earth was populated by and unpopulated at different times, and they were gigantic, huge people. Skeletons are so big that they're part of the landscape. But the evidence is becoming overwhelming that there were huge people of a different magnitude millions of years ago.
But when did they come over to start mining the tin and stuff like that?
Oh, when you by the time you get to the area of you go around the Great Lakes, especially where the copper is, there's traces of everything and every people. There are people there's archaeological remains from Japan, from the Vikings, from the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were probably part of the people that rescued a lot of the Indians and brought them to the Sedona area during the Great Flood. They have all over the world. People that have survived talk about how the Anunnaki helped them survive, showing them canyons where they could go underground and stuff like that.
Okay. Somebody's making noise. Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear that noise too. Yeah.
Okay. So we have about 37, 40, we have 20 minutes left. So where do we want to go with this? We've gone around. Anybody want to narrow this down and bring us into a certain focus? You have.
Well, I want to help raise money for this film that Eric is going to make about the Anunnaki, and there's this incredible teaser that I'm going to be showing together with my little article on this interview. And I want everybody to really look at this. And if you have connections or would like to help with this project, which Jennifer will tell you about, that's what I'd really like to see.
Right. I talked to Eric. He's sorry he couldn't make it today. He's on some kind of project or location or something. He didn't realize. But I'm going to talk to him about bringing him in another couple of weeks, and maybe we can do some more. But let's just open it up to the panel. Any questions you want to ask the panel at large or each other? Do you want to? Oh, Sasha wants you to speak once again about the Sitchin Chronicles and where are they in production?
I know that he has raised some money, and I think he's been researching for about 4 years. He may have the film about halfway done, but I think there are some rights that he's looking to buy for a certain amount of, visual rights, and it might be some audio rights just to enrich the film a little bit. And that's why filmmakers go out and raise money. He may also want to have a very unique soundtrack. That's something usually filmmakers need to pay for, like I did. So in order to really have good quality production so that it can be a saleable piece that can go to Netflix and Amazon and these other things, you need to have high enough production quality for both visual and audio codexes in order to, meet the requirements of these networks and these streaming channels. So I know that Eric is still looking to raise some more money, because often a film can easily be $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in order to, pay the professional people you need for their assistance. It's one thing to shoot and edit like I do, and it's another to have, the high quality sound and digital formats and rights issues and, legal fees covered to be able to then share your production. So it's, there's always a creative side as a filmmaker, but then there's the legal side. So I think that's where Eric is hoping to help raise some money. We recently did a special little project. I helped to participate in this, but there's a very large group of Sitchin supporters in Italy, and they hosted a Sitchin Day that was supposed to come off in June, and then it ended up happening more in October this year because of COVID. and I think it became a virtual online, celebration of Sitchin's life as opposed to being one in person, because we were originally going to go over for it, I think sometime in mid-July. But I gave a little message in Italian to this group, and I shared the little Sitchin memorial video that I had done a few years back. And apparently there was a great turnout, and a lot of fundraising has happened through this Italian group. So, but that's really interesting. Italian? I speak a little Italian. I lived in Italy for about 6 months when I was in college. Yeah.
Wow.
So I have some. Io adesso un poco italiano. It's very, very interesting.
So you have other film projects that you're doing. Is that correct?
Yes.
You've done and you're doing.
Yes.
Yourself here.
I am working on a compendium film. I produced this film about Travis Walton called Travis, the True Story of Travis. So and that did very well in mainstream film festivals. I was very pleased by that. We got into about 28 film festivals that accepted us, and about 10 of them we won special awards as well. So that's really unique. I think it was a bit of a breakthrough film, and many people have contacted me through the internet and through the film website and said, are you going to do a compendium film? You obviously as a filmmaker, you have a lot of footage on this topic. So when COVID hit, I went back to the drawing board, pulled out the hard drives because it wasn't a time to travel and interview, and I started working on a compendium film that will bring it up to speed. Because if these boys who had this experience lived in today's day and age, right? If the disclosure that we've had on the UFO topic happened in 1978 or 1980, the lives of these boys in this crew would have been completely different, as would Travis's life had been. And he might have been vindicated sooner and really been sought after, and there might have been maybe better, films made, better, Paramount films. What they did, Fire in the Sky, was not really a great film about the topic because they altered the history of the film. They made it much scarier, and they didn't stick to the truth or the facts of it. So I have started to work on a compendium film. That's kind of been a project. I also recently completed a film about James Forrestal and his life history, which is it's kind of a 1-hour short documentary on his life with Peter Robbins. And I'm also working on a new film with Bob Terrio about Mexican artifacts, which have been surfacing for 50, 60 years and describe a unusual history of possibly cross-pollination of the human species with an alien species, and possibly some sort of planetary catastrophe that happens where a planet breaks apart in a number of pieces and people have to leave the planet. There are pictorial images on these artifacts that are coming out of Mexico that describe some very unusual events. And these artifacts are considered fake by all mainstream archaeologists. They're not even considered by Mexican archaeologists to be anywhere real. And yet we are getting some carbon dates back from labs where there is resins, say, in pipes, that it's an organic material that can give accurate carbon dating. And the dating is really fascinating. We're going back 5,000 and 6,000 BC. And in some cases even further back, some cases even 16,000 BC. So this puts a curveball in our understanding, and I would like to unpack this a little further and explore this artifact topic. So that's another film we're working on.
Wow. Okay, Glenn, back to you. You've got about 12 minutes. What would you like to say?
I want to hear from Jennifer two things. Sitchin never really left somebody to pick up, other than you maybe, who knew him well, but he groomed nobody to pick up the story.
Well, he tried with his Sitchin seminars. He kept saying to all of us, all of you are going to be the ones that have to carry on, and you have to self-anoint yourself, to step up and carry the flags, so to speak, after I'm gone. But he was particularly interested in exploring in the British Museum the relics of what he believed was Inanna. It's a Queen Puabi skeleton, which they have in the basement of the British Museum. He had tried to empower a wonderful man named John Cogswell, who lives in the Denver area and is a lawyer. He tried to implore John to be able to get to the British Museum and demand genetic testing on this, DNA testing, on the remains of this skeleton, which is supposedly a very large skeleton, which you might consider to be a giant skeleton, in the basement of the British Museum. And as far as I know, that never really fully happened. That was one of his last conversations he had just about a week before he passed away. We were all hoping that Zach would leave money to have his archives and his research put into a national archive somewhere. Like in Philadelphia, we have the Philosophical Society, where you can have your letters and your research and your books you've written and your files of communications shelved, and people can go and look at your research and communications and try to, continue in your footsteps. But apparently that never really happened. When Zach passed away, he was not always particularly supported by members of his family. And I understand he had a son-in-law and daughter who lived in New York City who considered Zachariah's work to be blasphemy and not in line with traditional Orthodox Jewish thinking. And I believe they cleared out the apartment and put everything in an unprotected or, unair-conditioned storage locker, and then kind of went through it. They immediately put his apartment up for sale because Zach's wife, Rena, had passed a few years before. Yeah. And even people who were his personal assistants, like David Greenbaum, who lived a few blocks away, didn't even know that Zach had passed away and that the apartment had been cleared out. And David even had stuff in the apartment that belonged to him, which he never got back. So,
that's why the delay between his death when they announced it.
Correct. It was
we didn't know till 2 or 3 weeks after.
It was 2 to 3 weeks after when it was finally announced. They had already buried Zachariah in a small little, private ceremony, and none of us knew that he had died. And I felt very bad.
Well, let me add what you just said. Yeah, let me just add one thing. So Sasha and Zachariah communicated one letter, and Zechariah said to Sasha, please create an educational program and carry on. So I have that mounted somewhere. And then, what was his name? Lloyd Pye flew over to the museum, and he said that Zechariah had left some X amount in the millions for the Puabi. What you want to add to it? No, for Puabi's DNA evaluation, and then I guess they threw all this stuff away. So I don't know what happened to the cuneiforms and all that stuff. Do you have any idea what happened to these things that are very precious? Would they have just thrown those in the trash? That just sounds like a crime.
I think they were trying to sell things off. I made inquiries because Zach had asked me to edit the film footage of the travel trips. I offered to do it for like 8 or 9 years, and when he finally came around to saying he was ready for me to, come to New York, he wanted me to rent an apartment and live a few blocks away and come every day and work with him in his apartment. And I said, Zach, that's unrealistic, for me as a filmmaker financially. What you need to do is trust me. give me the tapes, I'll digitize them, and I'll return them to you. And I'll sign a contract with you that, you'll get to oversee and edit this. This will be your material, and I'll function as an editor for you. And we'll look and see what you have. And if it's good enough quality, I can use it. We can start to do some travel videos, because you've been to some amazing places. And when he finally decided he was ready for me to do that, I was in the middle of a project called the Disclosure Dialogues, which also won a number of awards. I was finishing that production, and I needed another 2 months to really finish that, and that was in 2010. And Zach died before I could get to New York and get the tape. So I did try to make some inroads with his family members to say, look, I have communications that verify Zach wanted me to do this. I can still do this for the foundation. I can help do this and raise money for the Zachariah Sitchin Foundation or Memorial or Research Project or whatever you want, But they wanted me to buy all of the footage, and it was, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was just like, look, as a filmmaker, I'm already volunteering my services, which is worth quite a bit to you. If you're not going to trust me and you're not going to review these communications with Zachariah, then I don't think we have we don't have a leg to stand on. I'm not in the position just to buy these things outright. And I think that they deteriorated, because tape in a hot storage container or in a freezing cold storage container will not retain its integrity. And it's been over 10 years now. So the footage is gone, unfortunately.
Gone. Wow. What a loss to humanity.
It's like the Taliban blowing up those statues of the Buddha.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, that's a shame. Wow.
So all
I
can do.
don't know what happened to the artifacts. They probably sold it. Anyway, we'll never know, right?
Yeah, I think they tried to sell whatever they could, and I think they made inroads with some antiquity dealers and things like that. But, I've just tried to travel in his footsteps, right? And archive my own footage and go off and do my own research, reading and following his books. In fact, every time I made a trip to Peru or something, I often had one of Sitchin's books with me. And a number of Sitchinites traveled with me to a number of these sites. So I went to archive and photograph these places, including Egypt, up and down the Nile as well. So it's,
okay, we're running out of time. Glenn, what would you like to say? We're going to wrap this up.
I would like to see Jennifer consider a trilogy movie that goes from the Sumerian origins of mankind in Ethiopia right up to modern day. Because in my work, I have many middle-age paintings that are revealing the secret. And I do believe I can prove that N.C.A.A was here as Jesus Christ, known as Jesus Christos in Greece and all around the world, and use this film to tie the cultures of the world back together that were smashed apart. I own the copyrights, Jennifer, in Washington, D.C. I registered them. And I had an A-list of Shrek writers, A-list screenwriters that I met the guy at Sasha at Zach's talk. I met a filmmaker from Maryland who got me to this group in L.A., and they wanted $100,000 to make the screenplay. And so I didn't have that money, so I didn't let it go. But I do own those copyrights. Maybe if you're interested, this would be something today to knit the earth back together.
Well, that's a fascinating, proposition and idea, whether it's me or whether I end up leading you to some of the resources that make it possible, because a film is always a business proposition as well. It's it's kind of like giving birth. There's lots of different pieces that have to come together at the right time and the right place to kind of make it really feasible.
Okay.
But it's something to be discussed further, And thank you for even suggesting it, Glenn. And it's so nice to reconnect. We've danced before. Maybe we'll dance again.
Yeah, that's something that's hopefully we can back out traveling in 2021, maybe 2022. Okay, we have 2 minutes. So, Glenn, what are your 5 books and how can people get them?
The 5 books are called the Books of Isis, and the best place for me to buy them, for you to buy them to help me, is at authorhouse.com, but they're available also at Amazon. Either place you can get them, and they involve weight loss and nutrition. They involve the disease is what causes them, sacred sex, which is the almost molecule discussion. Then they go into the Black Madonna, and book 5 is about the central bank and the predictions of Fatima in 1917 that are coming true right in front of us. The communist movement of the Communist Party will go underground and take over the world. And the wolf's at the door, Janet. So it's time for people to start reading and get moving.
Excellent. And Jen, final minute to you.
Okay.
How do people get your stuff?
So On Wings Productions is a good place. That's O-N and then W-I-N-G-E-S, because Wing is my maiden name. It's Norwegian. So onwingsproductions.com. They can learn a lot about me there. They can also go to traviswaltonthemovie.com. And they can also jump back and forth between the 2 sites because they're connected, and they can learn about the documentaries I've worked on and things like that. So that's a good place.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer Stein and Glenn Bogue and Deborah Franco, and thank Dr. Sasha and Alex Lessin, and I'm Janet Carol Lessin, and you were listening to Stargate to the Cosmos on Revolution Radio, Studio B, and we'll see you again on Sunday for the Sacred Matrix. Thank you very much. Love and blessings. And